So today in What the Actual Fuck?
And these are a broad category, the ones that Marty mentioned, like ADHD, the neurological disorders, ADD, ADHD, speech delay, language delay, tics, Tourette syndrome, narcolepsy, ASD, autism. All of these are injuries that I never heard of when I was a kid. They were not part of the nomenclature. All these autoimmune diseases, these exotic diseases that, again, I never heard of: juvenile diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, Crohn's disease, and 100 others that were just unknown when I was a kid.
So I had to go look this up just to make sure that I fully understand, but RFK Jr. was born in 1954. And every single one of the diseases that he lists as not being known when he was a kid is older than he is. Being a willfully ignorant moron does not make him correct. Signed, someone who has narcolepsy and has spent years learning about it since my diagnosis. But let's run through his list. Starting with narcolepsy, which was first clinically described in the 1870s, was already known to have genetic underlying components by the 1990s, and was defined as an autoimmune disorder triggered by exposures to certain versions of the flu when you have the genetic predisposition after the 2009 H1N1 outbreak. Because science, or Tourette's, famously first described by Gilles de la Tourette in the 1880s. Also, genetic underlying. What about ADHD, you say? Well, it was first clinically described in the 1700s. Its first diagnostic criteria were developed in 1902. It officially made it into the medical textbooks in the United States in the 1960s. And our diagnostic criteria expanded in the 1980s. What is the greatest driver of this? Genetics. It is an inheritable trait. So why might we see more cases of it? Better diagnostic tools and a bigger population. Diabetes, he said, was not a known thing when he was a kid. What? First clinically described 1500 BC. The ancient Egyptians knew what it was. So did the ancient Indians. The first people to identify juvenile diabetes as being a distinct disorder from adult onset diabetes did so in the 1880s. The first treatments for diabetes were invented in the 1920s. Again, 30 years before RFK Jr. was born. Also, by the way, an autoimmune disorder. Rheumatoid arthritis was first described in 1800, given its name in 1890. Also, an autoimmune disorder. Autism was first clinically described in the 1700s, was first given its formal diagnosis criteria in 1911, was adopted into the medical textbooks in the mid-1900s, and the diagnostic criteria expanded in the 1980s. So not new. Again, we have better diagnostic criteria and screening, and a bigger population. Also, has a genetic component. Lupus, also not new, was first described in the 1200s, had a full diagnostic criteria by the mid-1800s. There's certainly a better understanding of it since 1948, which means it's also older than RFK Jr. Crohn's disease was first described in 1875 and given its modern diagnostic criteria in the 1930s, which the last time I checked is still older than RFK Jr. Both of those last two are also autoimmune disorders. So he's not intellectually curious, he's not asking good questions, he's just willfully ignorant and spreading bullshit that is easily disprovable. So if you buy any of the shit that he's selling, I've got a bridge in Brooklyn to sell you.